So can I talk about how marriage benefits women? I will try.
Do you think marriage benefits women? Okay, let me put it this way. What is one thing you think women benefit in marriage? Just one thing. Just one. Put it down in the comment section. Because I saw a video of this woman sharing the benefits of marriage for women. And I was interested because I know that marriage benefits women, maybe, but benefits men more. So when I saw a very long video, like 6 minutes of this woman talking about the benefits of marriage, how marriage can benefit a woman, I was very interested because I wanted to know. Anyways, let's go ahead and watch these videos together. And I'll share my thoughts at the end of the video. But then let me know your own benefits for marriage when it comes to women down in the comment section, respectfully.
So can I talk about how marriage benefits women? I will try. Now, this is a tricky question because understand that the Institute of Marriage was never actually created for the benefit of women. It was created for the benefit of men and society in general, and as a tool to sort of raise children. And the idea behind monogamous relationships in particular, like the one man, one woman marriage, were to ensure paternity and also to ensure that more men could procreate, because if you have a polygamous sort of situation, then the men at the top are basically hoarding all the wives, and the men at the bottom are really not getting any wives or not procreating at all. And this creates all kinds of problems. So the whole one man, one woman marriage was kind of the solution to that. In truth, from a social perspective, they probably did create a lot more stability, but understand that that was very much done on the backs of women. The other thing to understand about marriage is that they were always a pseudo business arrangement. Almost all of history, love, romance, feelings, these were not important factors when you're talking about marriage. It was rare for women to really be able to choose who they would marry. At best, they could choose between a few pre-vetted suitors. So often they didn't really have much choice, and they really didn't have a choice not to marry, and their father would simply find them a husband. But essentially the deals would always be brokered by men, whether it was the bride's father with the groom directly or with the groom's father. And why I say this is because when you understand that that is the concept of marriage, it is a pseudo business arrangement and one that was fundamentally designed to raise a family, you then start to understand whether or not marriage would actually be a good idea for you. But either way, I think that the benefit that you have now, and one that women are often ignoring, is that for the first time in history, women are able to broker their own deals when it comes to marrying. Meaning that it is no longer their father that is negotiating their marriage. Now they are the ones who can choose if they will get married, and to whom they will get married, and on what terms they will get married. Which is why I'm a fan of prenups and actually encourage women to consider them, because it actually gets you thinking about this marriage in more business terms. Because the truth is, if you want a marriage to benefit you, you need to actually start thinking about the practical realities of what you want in your life and out of a marriage, and don't say just love, because if that's all you want out of a marriage, and I can tell you, your marriage is probably doomed to failure. And I'm sorry to have to be the one to say it, but it's true. When people go into it thinking all you need is love, and they forget about all the practical realities of building a life together, that's when they end up coming to me. Because one way or the other, love doesn't always last. It changes. It's inherently unstable. It is not a good foundation to build upon. And I'm not saying that love shouldn't be there, but that is not the reason to marry someone. Absolutely need to marry the good on paper guy, because let me tell you, it's the stuff on paper that is going to sustain your relationship, not the love. The love will come and go, it will change, it will grow, it will develop. There'll be times where you're struggling, times where life is tough, and then times where you're just like blissfully happy. But what holds it all together is all of that stuff. that's good on paper. And this is especially true if you want to have children, because having children puts you in a really vulnerable situation. You're putting your health, your body, your mind, your life on the line to bring this child into the world. And you need a partner who's got your back. You need a man who can provide, who can get stuff done, that you can rely on, who is responsible, not someone who's going to be just another child and another burden to you. Because the love and the chemistry, that will disappear really quickly when you have this useless lump sitting on your couch and you have to do everything for him. And he can't seem to figure out like how to press a button on the washing machine. That's not cute. Okay, but a lot of those guys, they can be super charming in the beginning, and that is almost a survival mechanism for them, because they know that that's the only card that they have to play to find a woman to look after them. So my best advice is to really stop leaning into your feelings when it comes to choosing a spouse, and actually thinking about the practical realities of what it is that you want in your life and whether or not this man can actually give you that life. Think of it more like a business partnership, and you will get a lot more out of it. Be shrewd, be practical, be smart. This is the only way that it will work for you. And if all you want is love and romance, then my suggestion would be don't get married. Just have lovers and enjoy your little romance and get rid of them when they start pissing you off. Because if all a man has to offer is love and nothing else, then maybe he can be a lover, but not necessarily a husband or a father. Because marriage is a serious business, so you have to start treating it that way if you want to get married. If that doesn't sound appealing to you, then maybe you should question whether or not marriage is right for you at all.
Okay, before I play the second video from the same creator, let's talk about this first video a little bit. Talking of benefits of marriage, you can see that before you can actually get benefits from a marriage, you must think of it as a business transaction. Do you know why? If you look at it this way, this is what most men do. They always go in for benefits. And we women, I just say this, we women, we have a soft heart, a very kind heart, and we go in for love, we go in for companionship, we go in for affection. And at the end of the day, when you're inside the marriage, you realize that there's no companion, there's no affection, there's nothing, and then you start regretting, and the marriage would end in disaster. She said it as well, and I always say it in my videos, that if you go in not with the mindset of what can I benefit from this person, what can I gain from this person, going like you have a business transaction, you're going in because you want to benefit something, not just because you want to go in because I like this person or I don't. Because eventually when you're inside this thing, love might fade, the love might grow. It is one way or the other, and most of the time the love fades, because at the end of the day, when reality sets in, when the old love bombing has ended, the reality sets in, you realize who your partner is. Then you start seeing so many things that you've actually pushed behind, or the things that you were not actually paying attention to, or even the red flags that you were thinking, oh, I can manage. Then you eventually start saying that, oh, I cannot actually manage this red flag. How do I continue this relationship with this person if is this kind of person, right? Going in as a business mindset, taking it as like a business mindset is just the best for we women, okay? Because this is not a new thing for men. Men will not marry if they're not going to benefit anything from you. Yes. If they're benefiting one or two things from you, in fact, even if they don't love you, the fact that they're going to benefit something from you, they will marry you. The fact that they're still in that marriage, even if they don't love you, and they're still benefiting something from you, even if it's as long as just one thing, they will still stay with you in that marriage. So this is just something you have to do before you marry, not when you're already inside the marriage. Think of it as a business something, and maybe you will get your benefits. And I feel like that makes sense. Anyway, she continued the conversation. Let's listen to the video to the end, and I'll be back to share my thoughts at the end of the video.
So the other day, I did a video discussing whether or not and how marriage could be beneficial to women. I got several comments from men saying that marriage was for the benefit of women because it would benefit men more to be promiscuous and to just sleep around with a lot of women. And while I get where they're coming from, I think it's important to unpack why that is not correct. First of all, if you look at hookup culture and casual relations, you already see men complaining about the fact that women are only interested in the top 10 or 20%. They talk about how all women want a man who's over 6 feet tall and constantly tell us about all the statistics on how that's such a small minority of men. Essentially, if you remove monogamy from society, then what happens is women will simply choose to only procreate with, let's say, men that they deem to be the best genetic prospects, and that's not the majority of men. And in fact, you see this happening in the animal kingdom with other mammals where there is no sort of monogamy happening amongst the male and the females. You get very few males for lots of females because the males will fight and kill each other for the ability to be able to procreate. So under that paradigm, most men would not procreate. Most men would not even survive, and even those that did procreate would not survive long before they were challenged by bigger, stronger men. So by implementing monogamy, yes, in some ways you could argue that men were asked not to go sleep around, although they would do that anyway, but then again, so did women. Let's put that aside. But they got something in return. And as I said in the previous video, it was not just to benefit men, it benefited society, it benefited children. It was just a good social construct in which to raise a family. The more important benefit to really understand is that historically, the entire patriarchal structure of society hinged strongly on a patrilineal line of succession, meaning a line of succession where land, title, and wealth were passed from father to son. Without that, patriarchy and society as we know it would not exist. Because if you think about it, if you are a man, how exactly are you going to accumulate resources and consolidate power if you do not have an heir to pass that down to? It's called generational wealth for a reason. And entire dynasties were literally built on this foundation of a patrilineal line of succession. And it is why women were historically cut out of the line of succession through all kinds of different laws. It's a theme that you see play out in Jane Austen's books. It's a theme that we saw in Bridgerton. It's a theme that we saw in Downton Abbey. It's also a theme that we saw in Game of Thrones, and it was a very real concern. A king's power, for example, would always be tenuous if he did not have a clear heir. Historically, so many wars were fought because the line of succession was broken or challenged. And as a man, the only way that you can have this patrilineal line of succession is if you can control procreation and if you can ensure that the children are biologically yours. The only way to control procreation like that as a man was to control women, because otherwise women naturally control procreation, and there's never any question of the child being biologically hers, obviously modern medicine notwithstanding. So the institute of marriage was really fundamental in creating society as we know it today, and it was historically the only way that men could ensure a clear lineage. If you removed that structure, then women would just mate with whoever they fancied, and you would never know as a man if that child was your child, and so you would be left with no heirs. Yeah. All of this had to be done at the expense of women's freedom, because as I said, you had to control women in order to control procreation, in order to ensure the patriarchal line of succession. So even though from some men's perspective, they consider that it is in some ways limiting their freedom, understand that it was still done for the benefit of men in general. And it was also done for the benefit of society, for the benefit of children, But certainly it was never done in contemplation of the benefit of women. The only benefits that women were given were things that were otherwise withheld from them legally, like ownership of land, titles, wealth, etc. Because again, they were cut out of the line of succession legally in order to basically incentivize them to marry a man. I think while not all of this necessarily applies in modern day society, I still think it's important to understand as a woman when deciding whether or not it would really benefit you to get married, particularly if you're a woman who has no interest in having children. And the most important thing is that you have options, so exercise those options carefully.
Most men actually get married because of children. That is why you see when two people come together to get married and there is no child in the marriage, they are already telling the family members of the guy is already saying, should we find another woman for you that will, reproduce for you since your wife cannot make kids, right? Most men, their mentality is, I want to have so many children at home. I want to have children because I want to pass on my legacy. You hear them say it. That's why you hear them confronting childhood by choice women that what's going to happen to your legacy? What about your their own is, can I make an error? How can I have my legacy? How can I, who am I going to give my wealth to? For those that have many, right? Who am I going to give my wealth to at a particular time when it is right? So all these things, that is why you see a lot of men going out there to, get women pregnant, have baby mamas all around because they don't want to be left alone. This particular video helped me to remember a video I saw of this woman actually speaking about what year women were allowed to open a business on their own and when women were legally allowed to do so many things. So back in the years, women were not allowed to do so many things, own a land, start a business, have a bank account. You must be married, right? And that is the benefits for marriage for women then. But now that it is not like that anymore, you can walk into the bank and open an account if you're a woman, even though you're a girl, right? You can just do that if you're above 18 here in my country. You can do that. So speaking of marriage benefits, women need to actually use their head, especially if you don't want to have kids. Let me look for that video I'm talking about. Let me show you all so you can have an idea, and I'll be back.
When I hear people say, oh, women just don't like to do this thing, or historically women haven't blah, 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 or why are you making it such a big deal that women are doing this thing? I like to remind people that for a very long time, women were not legally allowed to do a lot of things. So here's a list of more women's firsts. This is not the first time a woman did it. It was the first time women were allowed to do something legally in the United States. And I'm going to give you the date when all 50 states got on board with this. Okay. Women were first allowed to attend college in 1847, which is 200 years after Harvard was founded. Women were first allowed to keep their own wages in 1900, but weren't allowed to have a bank account until 1974. Women gained the right to vote only in 1920. Women were allowed to serve in the military as regular or reserve status, official status, only in 1948, after World War II. Very important. Women first given the right to birth control in 1965, but that was only for married women. Unmarried women did not gain that right until 1972, 7 years later. Women were first allowed to sit on federal juries in 1973. Women could own their own home in 1968, but you had to pay for it in cash because you weren't allowed to have your own bank account or get a loan in your own name without your husband's signature until 1974. Women were first allowed to own their own business without a signature of a man or a husband in 1988. Women were allowed to divorce their spouse, their husband, in no-fault divorce in 2010. And then I put this one in here because I thought it was really interesting. Women were allowed to breastfeed in public without the threat of public indecency charges, a Class B misdemeanor that can result in 180 days in jail for breastfeeding in 2018. So, the next time somebody wants to say that women just don't want to do these things, remind them that we are just now beginning to get to do the types of things that men have done for a very, very long time, and it is time for a change. What year do you think women were allowed to own a business on their own? Because it hasn't been forever. Business has been around forever, but women weren't allowed to do it on their own. Whenever I get discouraged about the work that I'm doing, I remember that it wasn't until October 25th, 1988, that women were allowed to own a business and get a loan without a man. 1988. And then 4 months later, I was born in 1989. Happy Women's Equality Day.
50 years ago, women were not allowed to have their bank accounts, their own bank account. Women were not even allowed to speak up. You must have a man. We all see those. In fact, even if you don't know, if you watch movies a lot and you watch all these 80s or 70s movies, you would understand how the world was working then. You would see the fear that women usually have. Women cannot just stand up, and a woman that stands up and really talk, she's in danger. She's always in danger, right? So, but now it's not like that. You see that if women are owning businesses, women are now successful. So when it comes to marriage and benefits for that, if you don't want children, most of the time, there is no need for it. Because as she said earlier, if you're going in for love, for companionship, for affection, it might not end well, because things like that, they fade in time, and it might not even be real, right? You might just be delulu. You might not even want, might just be love bombing, and you might not even know that it is not real love, right? So if you want that kind of love, that you want that companionship, can get companionship from anybody, mustn't be a man. Anyways, what is your take on this video? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Did you find this video interesting? Share your thoughts in the comment section respectfully, as always. It's your favorite girl again, Maria Davids, and don't forget to like and share and subscribe, and please turn on the post notification bell to get notified as soon as I upload another interesting video like this one. And I'll see you all in my next one. Bye.